The carpenter in this story was so sad because he had actually done this to himself. You know, he built this house. He would spend the rest of his life living in this house that he built half-heartedly, that he built without joy, he built carelessly and resentfully, without integrity. This morning I want to talk to you about how your character is your house. It's the house that matters the most. And we build it, every one of us. We build our own house every day, one day at a time, one choice at a time, on purpose or by accident, for better, for worse, every day. We build it by how we spend our time. We build it by the words that we speak. We build it by the words that we hear. We build it by the people that we love. We build it by the people that we ignore. And especially the thoughts that we allow our minds to ponder. I'm building my life, and when I cut corners or when I compromise my integrity, when I build with my selfishness or my resentment or my ego or my pettiness or my selfishness, I'm creating a future that ultimately becomes my destiny. You're building your house. How's your house going? If you have your Bibles, turn to the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 3. The writers of the Bible were really interested in what a well-lived life looked like. How do human beings thrive? How do they flourish? That's what Paul is interested in when he's writing this letter to the church there in Corinth. In Corinth, everybody was building their own houses. You know, they built their houses, they built their lives on their own status and their own wealth and their own reputation. And Paul brought this whole new idea in, a new pattern, a new way for people to be able to live their lives around this whole idea of self-giving love and humility, and this whole idea of dying to yourself and your ego. It's the cross-shaped life. It's why the word cross is used over and over and over again in this letter that he's written to this little church in Corinth. In this message, we're going to look at how Paul talks about how we ought to design our lives in a way where the goodness will last. Well, where we will flourish as people, because we have one chance, and so many times we squander that chance. Here we go. This is from 1 Corinthians chapter 3, starting in verse 9. Paul writes this: "For we are co-workers in God's service. You are God's field, God's building. By the grace God has given me, I laid a foundation as a wise builder, and someone else is building on it. But each one should build with care. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. If anyone builds on this foundation using gold, silver, costly stones, wood, hay, or straw, their work will be shown for what it is, because the day will bring it to light. It will be revealed with fire, and the fire will test the quality of each person's work. If what has been built survives, the builder will receive a reward. If it is burned up, the builder will suffer loss, but yet will be saved, even though only as one escaping through the flames. Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple, and that God's Spirit dwells in your midst? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy that person, for God's temple is sacred, and you together are that temple." Now, Paul's primary concern here is about the church. Not the walls around here, but the people are the church. We are the church. So this involves every one of us. This involves our lives. This involves how we build our lives. And everyone is constructing his or her life. Paul makes this amazing statement in verse 9. You are God's building. Think about that. You. Anybody ever seen that show, House Hunting? Okay? Yeah, it's like God is house hunting. God is coming from up there, he's coming down here, and guess what he finds? He finds you. You are his dream home. Think about that for a moment. You are his dream house. Now, of course, you're a fixer-upper. So am I. We are houses under construction. But here's the thing. You and I, we get to choose the materials that we build our house with. You do this. You do this. Not your circumstances, not your emotions. You. Paul lists 6 different materials in this passage, but they can really be divided up into 2 different groups. He talks about gold, silver, and precious stones, and he talks about wood, hay, and fodder or straw. Gold, silver, and precious stones. These are materials that'll stand up in the fire. Very often in the Bible, fire is the image to talk about God's judgment, his ability to decipher what is good and what is not good. And that's what's going on right here. Gold, silver, and precious stones are materials that have qualities that'll stand up to the fire. They'll stand up to God's judgment. Wood, hay, and straw, they're materials and qualities that will not. Building your life isn't a matter of your outward circumstances. It isn't a matter of your emotional circumstances. A lot of times we think it is. We think our lives are all about what we do. We think our lives are all about our income. We think our lives are all about job opportunities or how smart we are or how in shape our bodies are or how good looking we are or how perfect our hair is or what our GPA seems to be. No, it's all about character. It's the quality of my inner life that matters. It's the kind of thoughts and desires and intentions and habits that make up a lot of my time, that make up my minutes, make up my hours, my days, my years. That's what matters most about me. We even think about what matters most to God is our accomplishments, the things we do for God, our achievements. But no. One theologian put it like this: the main thing God gets out of your life is the person you become. The main thing God gets out of your life isn't your resume, it isn't your accolades or your achievements. It's not your accomplishments. It's the person that you become. And that also is the thing that is the main thing that you get in your life. God has created each of us with eternity, and my friend, you can take that great thing and take that with you forever. Now, there are these 2 questions in this message. They're really simple. What will I build my life with? And what are the qualities of the Spirit that a wise carpenter would choose? For gold, silver, and precious stones, we could actually think about what Paul talks about with the fruits of the Spirit. Gold being love, silver being joy, precious stones being peace. For wood, hay, and straw, we might think about the polar opposites of the fruit of the Spirit. You know, instead of love, ego. Instead of joy, envy. Instead of peace, hurry and anxiety. The reason we need to examine our lives in light of the cross is that the true nature of my and your inner lives and the character of my and your lives is actually known only to one other person but ourselves, and that's God. When he talks about that idea, Paul says this. He says, the day will bring it to light. You know what that means? He's going to make it known in high def. You know, the day will bring it to light. That actually comes from an old phrase from the Bible, the day of the Lord, the day of God's judgment, Judgment Day. The day will come when God will make everything clear, where all the mysteries will be solved, where there will be no more gray area left. I want to tell you about two different people who are part of the ministry world in which I live. And actually, you could probably find these two people in whatever arena or area you live too. From the outside, these two people, they live their lives and they look the same. They lead many people. They design a lot of programs. They're involved in organizational leadership. They would often speak at the same conferences. They have the same friends. They run in the same circles. They have similar levels of success and achievement. Yet a huge difference would materialize as you would get to know each of them personally and up close. When you'd get to know their inner circle of friends who knew them really well. Or how you would see how they would respond when they thought nobody else was looking. With the first person, the more people got to know him, the more they loved him. I mean, this guy was kind, he was patient, he was gentle, he actually cared about people. When he was wrong, he would admit it easily. He wasn't in such of a hurry. He was life-giving to work for people like this guy. He was just naturally a kind person. He treated people really well, whether you were a peer of his, whether you were on his staff, or you were just waiting on his table at a restaurant. Everybody was naturally interesting to him, not because he was trying to be more Christian, but because it just looked that way. At the end of his life, when things started slowing down, although there was great pain physically, he was able to let go of his life filled with great gratitude in his heart. His body aged. He didn't have the same title he had anymore, but the Spirit was filled with hope in him. And when he died, the circle of love that went around him, it just had a ripple effect. This kind of guy reminded me of Kay. The joy he produced, it just had this kind of way of just being contagious. With the second person, in a lot of ways, from the outside, it looked just the same. But looking in, it was the exact opposite. He had qualities that made for a successful career, but the closer you got, the more you saw this person's life, the more troubling was the truth, and the more shabby the house looked. He treated people poorly. He often used a combination of fear and intimidation. Sometimes he'd throw a little bit of flattery and manipulation in there. And it was clear in 101 ways that his ego was the one in charge. If you asked people who worked under him if he was a joy to work with, they would just laugh. People would be impressed from a distance, but up close they saw that his life was lonely and empty. And at the end of his life, you could feel him desperately trying to hold on to what little power he had when he was younger, because it's all the thing that he had. There are these two lives that from a distance would look the same, but up close, one was made with gold, silver, and precious gems. The other was made with wood, straw, hay. What am I building my life with? You know, my secret life, my eternal life, because the main thing God gets from me is the person I become. Sometimes it's a story between two families. We'll see two families from a distance. The kids look like they're just really flourishing, but if you get up close, one of them is filled with coldness and pressure to conform. The other family is just like it's being nourished and it's filled with love and joy. Or you see like two coaches. They both have the same track record, but one coach, he operates under anger and fear and intimidation. The other coach, he operates with teaching his kids about inspiration and encouraging them and loving them. How are you building your life?
Hi, I'm Daniel. My last name is Sim. I'm a medical doctor. I'm a member of the medical staff here at the VA, Spokane VA Medical Center. I started coming to this church the fall of 2006, and it's such a blessing to be part of this church. I was born and raised in Cotabato, a town in the island of Mindanao in the southern Philippines. I'm so blessed by a father who is a Christian, who loves the gospel. And so my father always, whenever he had a chance, whenever we were together, he would always tell me about that God loves me, that Christ died for my sins. And then one Sunday in 1961, I was 11 years old then. I was sitting in the pews, I was listening to a sermon, and at the end of the sermon, the preacher would call for decisions for Christ. And I was standing there and I said yes, and the moment I said yes, there's that intense feeling within me, a feeling of being loved. And I cannot imagine how could a creator, the creator of the universe, would come and be interested in me. And I cannot help but sob. I was shaking, I was sobbing, I went forward. Right after that, I surrendered for baptism. So when I was baptized, I felt that I really belonged to Him. And that was the start of the journey. I can remember that God was pursuing me. And it's just a relationship that, you couldn't shake. My wife, Miriam, and I got married when we were young. We were barely 20, and then we started having kids. That was before I went to med school. And, being a medical student, we're in a dire situation. If you're in that situation, quarrels and disagreements between Miriam and I is almost like a daily thing. Sometimes we will not be talking to each other for days. And sometimes I'll think, hey, if she would just say sorry, that would change things in a heartbeat. But God, in His goodness, He would tell me, no. You must not think of yourself more important. You may be right in your thinking, in your opinion, you may be right, but that's not the point. The point is that you should be humble and submissive. Through these years, I have felt that God has been teaching me a lot of things. I thought I was going to be called to preach the gospel. I dreaded it, to be honest, because I may end up, being poor or something like that. But God had other plans for me. When I was in med school, every step was such a challenge. I started practicing just outside Manila. And I practiced for about 11 years. And then when finally I got my visa to come here, I decided to close my clinic, sell everything, and come to the States. When I came to the States, I have to start all over, because my license doesn't transfer, so I cannot be a doctor here. I have to do the training, go down to Fort Worth, Texas, while Miriam was lived with her sister in Alaska. We were separated for about a year. And it was such a desperate time for me because I was lonely. In fact, some of the times that I would call my wife, I said, I can't take this anymore, I wish there's something else that we can do. But somehow, after I pray, I could clearly see the hand of God and say, no, you're on the right track. Just keep on. Just focus on the goals I have for you. I have big things for you. Just focus on that. Do what is necessary for the day, and I'll take care of the rest. I remember my father telling me when I was growing up, have no regrets in life. The only way, that's what he told me, the only way that you can avoid these regrets is to live a life of integrity. By integrity, that means that you allow God to control you. When I get to the States, when I got here in 1993, I didn't have any job. The little that we had, we tithed that, we gave that. Even at the most stressful times in our lives, we always set aside to honor God. And God has always been faithful to us. God has a great plan for this church, and I'm looking forward to the future.
What a beautiful man, what a beautiful couple. Miriam, you are gorgeous. You are. Just inside and out. And my friend, Dr. You married up, my friend. There's no doubt. But Doctor, thank you for opening up, and thank you for sharing your story with us. You are a man that has built your life with gold and silver and precious stones. And when you talk about this integrity and what your dad was teaching you about living a life of integrity, it's when you have those qualities of the Spirit that can stand up under the fire. And that's how you've lived your life. So I really commend you and your wife. It's wonderful. On the opposite of that, despair. Despair is when you've built on wood and hay and straw. No matter how big or impressive, you think your life is. You could even be a doctor. Your resume, it doesn't really matter. But it's a question all of us really need to ask ourselves. How are you building your life? Is there a relationship where you need to pour in some love? Is there somebody in your life you need to encourage, to listen to play with, to serve alongside, or give a gift to? Is there a place where God is calling you to be grateful? So many of us are building our houses of hurry, and it's killing us. We say, you know what, I need to make space for God, but I don't have time. I need to spend more time reading the Word of God, but I don't have time. I'll do that tomorrow. I don't have time to take care of my spiritual well-being. I don't have time for self-care on how I can be the kind of man or the kind of woman that God has designed and destined for me to be. And we need to remember the main thing God gets out of your life is the person you become. So what are you building your house with? Secondly, I want to talk to you about what are you building your foundation, your life on. Paul has this very mysterious statement in verse 15. He says, hey, if it's burned up, the builder will suffer loss, but yet will be saved, even though only as one escaping through the flames. In other words, hey, even somebody who builds their life with a lot of wood, a lot of straw, a lot of these wrong materials, they have a lot of hay, a lot of stubble, they're making a lot of mistakes, they're doing a lot of things wrong. Even those people, they're going to be okay, they're going to be saved. Now, he says, they're going to lose something. They're going to lose some of the rewards. In other words, I think that means some of the goodness, some of the goodness that God has designed for our lives, some of the goodness God has built into us, we're going to lose some of that. But he says, you'll still be saved. Paul says, you'll still be that kind of person who will be able to be with God through eternity because you have built your foundation in the right person. Your foundation is what you count on more than anything else. Foundation is the most important part of a building. Your foundation is what your heart depends on so that you can be secure when everything hits the fan. When your dreams get shattered. When things don't go as planned. My foundation is my ultimate commitment. Not just what I say is my ultimate commitment, but what is really my ultimate commitment. It might be money. For a lot of people it is. You know, it might be health. For a lot of people it is. It might be looks. A fair amount of people do this. And it makes the aging process all that much more difficult. It might be being the smartest person in the room. It might be having kids that turn out just right. Paul says this, for no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. And of course, he lays it in his cross. Through Jesus' whole life and his teaching, and then of course, through his self-giving love, dying on the cross for the forgiveness of all of our sin, and later resurrecting on the third day, God is starting this new building. That building is you and me. It's the church. It's us. Again, not these physical walls. It's the people within them. And I can make Jesus the foundation of my life, not my circumstances, not my emotions. I can trust him. I can depend on him. I can hand over my dreams to him. I can take my direction from him, and I confess to him my shortcomings. I'll tell you, when you make Jesus the foundation of your life, whatever storm will come into your life, because it will come, whatever hurt and heartache will come into your life, because we live on this planet, it will come. It might rock your world, but it won't destroy you. When you make Jesus your foundation, sometimes God takes these materials that are uncomfortable, these materials that aren't very, pleasant, these materials that you didn't want and you thought were so painful, and he makes them, ironically, the most beautiful part of your house, because that's where grace and joy and peace shine through the most. I know this. God does this to people all the time. That marriage that seemed like it was the end could be a new beginning. That birth that looked like it was a heartache can bring joy like nothing else. It all depends on what your foundation is and who you lay your foundation with. Let me make this personal. What are you building the foundation of your life on? Next week, we're celebrating baptisms. We've been watching all these stories of these people telling, they're great stories of how they came to know Jesus and had faith in Jesus Christ. Anybody who has faith in Jesus Christ can make Jesus their foundation. And they can go through this next step of obedience, of going into baptism. If you haven't done that yet, you can make Jesus your foundation today. You can confess your sin. You can die to yourself, die to your ego. You can ask him, Lord, would you be the foundation of my life? You could be baptized. You could be baptized in front of a whole church of people that would just be cheering you on, saying, yes, Yes, you can do that. People will be standing and they'll be applauding you because this is the most important decision you've ever made in your life. You can get baptized because a long time ago, there was a carpenter, a master carpenter, who was in the house building business. And let me tell you, he's still in the house building business, and he can build your house with you.